In early 1979, the world watched as one of the Middle East's most powerful monarchies collapsed in a matter of weeks. Streets filled with millions of demonstrators, soldiers defected from their own army, political prisoners walked free from shattered prison gates. For decades, Iran had been ruled by the Western-backed monarch Mohammad Reza Pahlavi, the last Shah of Iran. His government had built a modernizing state with strong security services, oil wealth, and deep ties to Western powers. Yet beneath the surface, resentment had been building for years. By February 1979, that resentment exploded into what became known as the Iranian Revolution, a movement that replaced a monarchy with a new political system unlike any other in the modern world, an Islamic Republic governed by religious authority. At the center of this transformation stood a cleric returning from exile, Ruhollah Khomeini. But the revolution did not end with his return. In the decade that followed, a new generation of political leaders emerged from the turmoil. Among them was a relatively unknown cleric who had spent years in underground political networks and revolutionary activism. His name was Ali Chamenei. Today, he is one of the longest-serving heads of state in the world. But how did a revolutionary preacher become the supreme leader of Iran? To understand that rise, we must first go back to the decades before the revolution, when the foundations of the modern Iranian state were being built and the forces that would eventually overthrow it were already taking shape. In the decades leading up to 1979, Iran underwent dramatic transformation. The country's political structure had been shaped by the rule of the Pahlavi dynasty, which began with Reza Shah in 1925 and later passed to his son, Mohammad Reza Pahlavi. The younger Shah came to power during World War II and gradually consolidated authority over Iran's political system. By the 1960s and 1970s, he ruled with strong, centralized control. At the same time, Iran experienced rapid modernization. The Shah launched an ambitious reform program known as the White Revolution in 1963. This initiative included land reforms, expansion of education, women's suffrage, and large investments in infrastructure and industry. Supporters described it as a modernization project meant to transform Iran into a powerful global state. Critics saw something very different. Many religious scholars believed the reforms threatened Iran's Islamic traditions and clerical authority. Land reforms weakened traditional religious endowments, and Western cultural influence was growing rapidly in major cities. One cleric in particular emerged as a vocal critic of the Shah's policies, Ruhollah Khomeini. In 1963, Khomeini publicly denounced the government's reforms and its close relationship with Western powers. In a sermon that would later become widely quoted in revolutionary circles, he declared, "Our country has become a base for foreign powers." Soon after these speeches, he was arrested. Large protests erupted across Iran. The unrest was violently suppressed, but the event marked the beginning of a long confrontation between the monarchy and the religious opposition. Khomeini was eventually forced into exile. First, he was sent to Turkey. Later, he moved to the Iraqi city of Najaf, where he would remain for many years. From there, he continued to influence Iranian politics through recorded sermons and written statements that were secretly distributed inside the country. By the 1970s, cassette tapes of his speeches circulated widely among students, clerics, and political activists. Among the young men listening closely to these messages was a cleric from Mashhad, Ali Chamenei. Chamenei had been born in 1939 into a religious family. As a student in seminaries in Qom and Mashhad, he became involved in networks of scholars who opposed the Shah's government. Throughout the 1960s and 1970s, Khamenei was repeatedly arrested by the Shah's intelligence service, the notorious SAVAC. Former political prisoners later described interrogations, surveillance, and strict censorship. Western media coverage of Iran during this period often emphasized the country's rapid modernization and economic growth. But inside Iran, Underground political movements, religious, nationalist, and leftist, were quietly organizing. By the mid-1970s, these tensions were approaching a breaking point. The final years of the 1970s were marked by growing instability across Iran. Economic growth had slowed, inflation was rising, and political repression remained intense. Public frustration began to appear in protests that started in early 1978. The demonstrations were triggered by an article published in a government-linked newspaper criticizing Khomeini. The piece accused him of being a foreign agent and attempted to discredit his religious authority. The reaction was immediate. Students and clerics protested in the city of Qom. Security forces responded with gunfire. According to contemporary reports and witness testimonies, several protesters were killed. Their funerals soon turned into larger demonstrations. A cycle began: protests, repression, funerals, and new protests. Each gathering brought more people into the streets: workers, students, religious groups, and intellectuals, groups with very different political visions, all joined the movement opposing the Shah. International media outlets began reporting on the growing unrest. Western television networks broadcast images of massive crowds marching through Tehran. Some newspapers described the events as a political uprising, while others portrayed them as a religious revolution led by exiled clerics. Meanwhile, inside Iran, opposition groups used mosques, pamphlets, and underground recordings to organize demonstrations. The scale of the protests continued to grow. By late 1978, strikes had spread through key sectors of the economy, including the oil industry. Oil production, the backbone of Iran's economy, slowed dramatically. The government struggled to maintain control. In January 1979, the Shah made a decision that would change the course of Iranian history. He left the country. Officially, it was described as a temporary departure for medical treatment and rest, but many Iranians understood the meaning immediately. After nearly 40 decades of rule, the monarchy had effectively collapsed. Just weeks later, in February 1979, Ruhollah Khomeini returned to Iran from years in exile. Millions of people gathered to welcome him. Archival footage from the time shows vast crowds filling the streets and rooftops of Tehran. The revolution had reached its decisive moment. After the fall of the monarchy, Iran faced a new and uncertain future. The revolutionary coalition that had united against the Shah was diverse and divided. Secular liberals, Marxists, Islamic activists, and nationalist groups had all participated in the uprising. But the political structure that emerged after the revolution quickly began to favor religious leadership aligned with Khomeini. In April 1979, a national referendum was held. Voters were asked a simple question: should Iran become an Islamic republic? According to official results, more than 98% voted yes. A new constitution soon followed, introducing a unique political concept known as the guardianship of the Islamic jurist. This doctrine, developed by Khomeini, placed ultimate authority in the hands of a senior religious leader. That position became known as the supreme leader. The early years of the new state were marked by rapid institutional change. Revolutionary courts were established to try former officials of the Shah's government. Political purges removed many figures associated with the monarchy. New security forces emerged as well, including the powerful Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. Meanwhile, international attention intensified. In November 1979, radical students seized the United States Embassy in Tehran, leading to the Iran hostage crisis. For 444 days, American diplomats were held captive. The event dominated global media coverage and transformed Iran's relationship with the United States. Inside Iran, political competition also intensified. Several revolutionary factions struggled for influence over the direction of the new republic. During this period, Ali Chamenei began rising through the political ranks. He had developed strong ties with revolutionary clerical networks and had been active in organizing opposition to the Shah. After the revolution, he quickly became involved in the new political institutions. In 1981, during a turbulent period marked by political violence and assassinations, Khamenei was elected president of Iran. At the time, the position was still subordinate to the authority of Supreme Leader Khomeini. Khamenei served 2 presidential terms during a period defined by another major crisis, the Iran-Iraq War. The conflict began in 1980 when Iraqi forces invaded Iran. The war would last 8 years and reshape Iranian politics, society, and leadership. During these years, Khamenei became a prominent figure within the revolutionary government. But few observers at the time expected that he would eventually rise to the highest position in the state. That moment would come only after the death of the revolution's founding leader. In June 1989, the political landscape of Iran changed once again. Ruhollah Khomeini, the central figure of the revolution, died after a decade in power. His death created an immediate question: who would lead the Islamic Republic? According to the Constitution, the supreme leader had to be a senior religious authority with significant clerical standing. Ali Chamenei did not initially fit that description. At the time, he was serving as president and was respected within the political leadership, but he was not considered one of the highest-ranking religious scholars. However, Iran's Assembly of Experts, the body responsible for selecting the supreme leader, debated the issue intensely. Archival recordings from the meeting later revealed disagreements among senior clerics. Some argued for a council of leaders rather than a single figure. Others supported Khamenei as a pragmatic political choice who had strong ties to the revolutionary establishment. In the end, the assembly voted to appoint him as the supreme leader. Shortly afterward, constitutional changes were approved that modified the requirements for the position. Ali Chamenei had become the new leader of the Islamic Republic of Iran. From revolutionary activist and political prisoner to president and now supreme leader, his rise reflected the complex power struggles that shaped Iran after the revolution. More than 30 decades later, he remains one of the most influential figures in the Middle East. Understanding how he came to power requires understanding the revolution that created the system he now leads. And that revolution began with the fall of a monarchy, the return of an exiled cleric, and a moment in history when millions of people believed they were witnessing the birth of a new political order.